Awesome. We're recording now. So Neal, we were just talking before, but thanks for switching to podcast mode right now and letting us hear more about your book. I was mentioning to you, I read it and I love it. We actually wrote a post about the history of influencer marketing about a year ago, going back to like ancient times as well, which is, I know how you started your book too. And you guide us through how it morphed through the Michael Jordan era and Nike, and then to current day with all the way down to the nano and micro influencers. So wanted to have you on quickly and tell us more about it.
Hey, thanks, Brett. Yeah, influencer marketing is an interesting term that if you're in e-commerce, you obviously want to tap into the power of influencers, but there's still a lot of companies out there. And I'm going to borrow the word cringe. When they hear about influencers or influencer marketing, they cringe, right? And I think that influencers and influencer marketing has gotten a bad rap in the media. I think that over the last few years, there's been a tendency to equate influence with number of Instagram followers. And there's been a whole ecosystem of agencies and companies and that have come about that really want to foster that the more followers, the more money, and everybody makes more money, right? So, the reason I started writing the book is I do a lot of speaking and consulting, and I also teach marketing to executives. And it began to be the number one question I was getting, like starting 2 or 3 years ago. So as I dug into it, I realized that, well, are you saying that blogger outreach isn't influencer marketing? Because it is. What about affiliate marketing? Of course it is. What about B2B companies? Of course they're doing influencer marketing. They're inviting influencers to speak at their events, to interview on their blog, what have you. So really this concept of digital influence is all around us. And what's more important for those that are hopefully have already subscribed to Gatsby or are on the fence is, what I propose in the book, because influencer marketing is so powerful once you look at it that way, instead of looking at the traditional model of, number of followers, mid-tier, macro, micro. If the influencer marketing industry determines that, 1,000 followers is enough to be considered an influencer, that's what they would call a nano influencer, look around you, right? Look around to your customers, your followers, your employees. There's probably a lot of people around you that are already at that level. And so why spend cycles reaching out to someone that might have a lot of followers, might have a lot of influence, but doesn't know anything about your product? And in order to convince them to pitch your product, it's going to require a lot of money and probably turn into a one-time transaction. Why not look at the power of the people that already know, like, and trust your brand to some extent, right? And those are your employees, those are your partners, those are your customers, those are your fans, those are people that tag you. And for whatever reason, one of my e-commerce clients, and I'm sure some of you out there as well, your customers that buy your product through like a CVS or Walmart, right? Amazon does provide you, data where you can sort of find out who these people are. But if they're buying it through a third party, through another retail store, you don't know who that end customer is, right? But if they tag you, if they talk about you on social media, obviously there's some brand affinity. And what's really interesting, Brett, is since COVID-19, guess what? Brands are saying, hey, we want to work with influencers that already use our product, right? Yep. And of course, so we're seeing this natural evolution take place. And we're seeing, influencer marketing budgets get a little bit more rationalized, but we're also seeing that the influencer marketing industry created people that just wanted to acquire followers and fake likes and participate in Instagram pods. And we call that fraud, right? There's a lot of wasted influencer marketing budget that's gone into this. When we talk at the lower level, especially your customers, I mean, Brett, we were talking about this, they may not all want to become affiliates for you because they're just normal people, right? At the nano influencer level, but those people already love you. They love your brand. And just by recognizing that and building a program around that, you're going to have your passionate fans, but they're going to be talking more about you in social. And, the number one thing, Brett, that I realized, and I do a lot of business in Japan, I speak Japanese, and they're pretty far behind in all of this, but there are companies, I see it in China and Southeast Asia as well. There are companies that have very, very little organic social media presence, but influencer marketing, the whole idea of social media is inciting word of mouth. Your Facebook ads are not inciting word of mouth, right? They're getting in front of people like a billboard does.
Well, right. A quote from your book, actually, on this, you mentioned here, leverage the power of people to communicate. I wrote that down because it's spot on. Like, you go on to talk about how people outperform brands on engagement because totally. We relate more to people. And then you actually went on and showed the algorithm of what social media platforms do when they decide how much your post should be seen, right? And they
Yep.
show the algorithm of like how the early engagement is on the post, and then they choose to expand and that sort of thing, right? And people, because they get more engagement than brands, are more likely to be exposed to a larger audience of people who are following that person. So it's just natural. And you mentioned even some brands that, like Disney, you mentioned, it's not even building content around what it wants to build. It's just letting one of the most iconic brands of all time, letting their beloved consumers create the content for their experience, for their handle. And that's just, it gives me chills to think about that as just, it's easier for Disney, and B, it's more authentic. Like where is the downside here? There isn't one, in my opinion.
And Brett, if everyone listening, if they can use Gatsby to incite enough word of mouth, you don't have to create your own content. In fact, you can use that user-generated content from your customers, right? You can use that not just in social media. You could use it for your ads. You could use it on your website. You could use it on your shopping cart. And we're already seeing data that shows that user-generated content from your fans, when that's put on your shopping cart page versus your stock photos, it's outperforming, as you can imagine. So it begins to sort of uncover like, we don't need to create content anymore. And I'm not saying you don't have to create any content, but definitely there is a value in influencers, not just in the amplification of content and inciting word of mouth, but also because people at the nano influencer level, I mean, they're content creators, right? They're taking photos, they're taking videos, and that might be a greater value than the actual amplification of your content. Just something to think about. I've seen the industry really shift since I've written the book into looking at influencers more as content creators and as content amplifiers.
And to go back, you did mention, so the book, let's just go back a second. You wrote this book in 2019, right? It's 2020 now, today. You mentioned some numbers early on, just a few minutes ago. You mentioned brands might be surprised at how many of their customers are a nano influencer, right? And so I'll give you some numbers from our experience, right?
Awesome.
So we have brands, and what we find, it does vary based upon who the demographic is of the consumer, right? So if a brand is selling primarily to an older demographic, it may not be as high as what I'm about to tell you, but we find that some of our brands, especially ones in the fashion space, 40% of people who give their handle to the brand have over 1,000 followers. I mean, it's a tremendous number of people who are engaging with these brands. And now, to go back a second, so the way Gatsby works, as you know, but maybe people don't know listening, is that you're adding a field into like a Klaviyo pop-up or into your order confirmation page or into a sign-up form that merely asks the consumer to give their Instagram handle. It's typically an optional field, so consumers can choose to opt in to give the brand their handle. And then Gatsby goes on the back end and quickly enriches that with social media context, and then passes that information different places, and we can start to measure the impact of that. So what we find is about 1/3 of people will give their handle when they have the option, right? And then if we have 40% of them have over 1,000 followers, that is a tremendous number. Like you could be a relatively small brand and start to find micro influencers and nano influencers right away.
Yeah, and I think what's really important is when you do that, we're serving a more diverse audience, and we need to be more diverse in what we do. And by collecting that and by having a pool of different people from different backgrounds with different perspectives on your brand and different types of content, it gives you the ability to do that as well, right? And I think that's something that a lot of people forget about. It's a nice fringe benefit of being able to access that data and be able to tap into these people and find these ideal types of brand ambassadors that you've always dreamed about, they're lurking. I mean, they're in your customer database, right?
There's so much yeah, exactly. I want to talk to you about so many things, but in the interest of time, I think I'm going to, like, for example, you talked about consumers, losing trust on celebrity endorsements compared to the mommy bloggers, right? And that's given the rise to this. I could go into that for a while, but I think I'm going to, and then of course that goes into authenticity and why Gatsby even exists in the first place and why the nano influencer trend is emerging. But let's skip ahead to the end of the book and give us a quick, our URL for Gatsby is Gatsby.ai, right? Artificial intelligence is been my vision for this company and continues to be my vision. And you go into the end of the book with that mindset. Can you tell us more about what you're thinking and visualizing for the future of this space?
Yeah. So, why do some images outperform others, right? Why do some people outperform others? And once we can tap into the data, we can start to see, we can start to sort of measure influence. Measure impact that a specific person, a specific image or piece of content would have in social media. I think we're still at the very, very early days. And obviously we don't have access to the algorithms of the social networks. But the whole idea is that, in social media, there's a lot of different people. And if you know that that person has influence, it's one thing. But if you don't, how do you decide, how do you see who's an influencer or not when there's so much fake followers and what have you? So, the use of artificial intelligence these days can actually help you not only find who might be real, who might be fake, but even if it's real, why are they getting the engagement they're getting? Or what sort of content might they be getting the best engagement on? And then you can really, if you really want to work with them together on very, very specific campaigns, you can architect it in a way to get the best results. And you can actually sort of predict how your campaigns are going to perform in advance because the AI has access to all the past data and can run the calculation. So, we're not equating people to programmable ad units, which is something we want to avoid, but we're using data and machine learning and AI to better predict who to work with, how to work with them, and what are going to be the results of that. And that to me is the most exciting. Obviously, once you start to work with influencers, you begin to create sort of baseline metrics. But going forward, I'm really excited about that potential. So, maybe at some point, Brett, Gatsby is going to be able to say, and I know that I don't want to give anything away about your product roadmap, but I know you're going to be starting to introduce features to give people a sense and give customers a sense as to who might be better nano influencers to engage with going forward. But, taking that one step further, I think that there's going to be an incredible value and incredibly greater ROI is the ultimate, end goal of all this. And I think by using that and working together with tools like Gatsby.ai that are leveraging AI, that's going to be your best bet to really maximize ROI from these relationships.
Yeah, great teaser there. That's going to be exciting to announce pretty soon. So your book, it's out. You published it in March. Is that right?
Yep, two days before the pandemic here in California, 2 days before lockdown. Perfect timing.
Good timing. It's called The Age of Influence. The Age of Influence, and like I mentioned, I want to figure out a way to partner with you guys and get all of Gatsby customers a special on this. So stay tuned.
That'd be awesome.
But they can find it on Amazon. What's the best place to get it?
Yeah, you can find it anywhere. It's published by HarperCollins Leadership. So HarperCollins does like Gary Vaynerchuk's books and stuff. So it's at our local Barnes & Noble here in Tustin, it was on the shelf. So yeah, you can find it anywhere you buy books. There's even, I don't have it with me right now, but there's an MP3 version and an audio CD version for those old school and new school people, but it's out there.
Awesome. Well, then I look forward to working out a deal with you and getting this to our customers, and then in the meantime, continue this relationship and building out, this partnership with you. Thanks for all your insights in the book.
No, thanks for developing Gatsby.ai. I look forward to future enhancements.
Of course. Thanks, Neal.